In the previous program on this Black Pine series, we were trying to get to a finished Black Pine Bonsai in about 10 years. What I'm going to do on this particular program is to show you a much better finished product in about 20 years. So what we're going to do is basically what we learned in the previous series, it applies, but we're going to spend more time in between to make the plants bigger, mainly the trunk fatter. It doesn't necessarily mean bigger this way, but we want to make sure that it goes this way, so that when we get done, the finished product will be much more impressive. Previously, we talked about how to select 1 gallon. So everything that we learned so far all applies. What's going to differ is from here, instead of into a bonsai pot, we're going to put it into a bigger growing medium, typically a 5-gallon nursery stock. So we start out with a healthy plant, of course. And as we zoom out, make sure everything that we learned previously all apply. Root flare, some movement, and taper. Actually, it's kind of lacking in taper, but at this point, we don't really care because as we get to the next step, you'll understand what I'm trying to do. Rake out the roots. Make sure that they're not coiled. So that's what we're looking. Now, if one of these is not strong enough, what we could do is the root hook. But you can do more damage with this. So whenever possible, use the least intimidating one first. And making sure that you go around and there's no coiling, and go through and work all that loose. That's okay. Now, having worked that loose, it's ready to go into a growing container. This is where it differs. Instead of into a bonsai pot, it's going to go into a large growing container. Now the plant just came out of this container. This is known as the 1 gallon within the industry. So from the 1 gallon, we could either go into a 2, maybe this is a 3, but the next size up, which will give us 2 to 3 times the soil, meaning it'll grow faster than if it stayed in here. But I'll put it into this one. This is known as the 5 gallon. So it will be 4 to 5 times as much soil, and then it will have the chance to grow much more vigorously. Now, some of the features that you need to look for at this stage is low branches. These lower branches are key to our future success. You know, some of you are saying, Hiro, this does not have the features that we talked about before. You know, about the taper, it doesn't have taper. Thickness here is about the same. Thickness down here, thickness here, and thickness here are just about the same, meaning it's lacking in taper. And we always emphasize taper, taper, taper as one of the elements. The root flare, taper, movement. Those are the three components of a good bonsai. You ask, why are we even bothering with this crummy material? Just hang on, just hang on. We'll get to how we're going to work this to the next level. So if you had planted that one into a 5-gallon and waited maybe 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer, we'll have something like this. And I'll pull it out of the can to see the features. Now that we have spent a few years letting this fatten up, we could see that the trunk has gained some bark, so we're probably looking at 7, 8, maybe even 9 years old. And as we go up, it's starting to show some taper. The main reason it's not really great bonsai material is this section, and of course this section is awfully long. And unless you're going to make a very large and tall bonsai with skinny trunk, this won't work. But this is a good material in that we talked about our sacrifice branch before, and usually we're referring to on the bottom branch to fatten that area. But what if we think of this as being the sacrifice and this part here being the main trunk? So as we turn it, so it's going to go up this line, go up this line, and perhaps up this line in the future. And this is where the difference between our first set of instruction to this one here is that we're thinking in terms of long term. I often ask my students, you want something that looks good now or so-so now, or you want something great in the future? So now we're going for greatness with the anticipation that we will spend more time. So now let's visualize this main part being gone, and this is the section that we're going to work. And then, once again, this is not the finished product either. We're going to let this grow like we did here as sort of the sacrifice, and cut again so that either this is the apex, or better yet, this is the apex. But that is 3, maybe even 5 years away. So what you're asking is, Hiro, why don't you just cut it? I could, but by keeping this and keeping all that, I get more growth. So the more that the plant grows, no matter where it is, we could get more girth. The total growth will help the girth down here. And to control the amount that grows at the bottom, we use these horizontal sacrifice branch. The only thing that's important, if you're going to keep this, is to keep this part open so this doesn't get weak in the shade. You know, there's nothing here. That means that these will easily grow stronger. I'm thinking about cutting it here, but that would also weaken. I also need to thicken this area so it's about the half of the thickness of this when this gets cut off. So all this is like a chess game. You have to plan ahead and execute when the time is right, not at your convenience. The question is, are we done yet? No way. This is not a finished product. It's not a great product, but it has a great potential for the future. So if you have the front, and eventually I think we're going to tilt this back like that. So if you look from the side, it'll be more upright than leaning forward. But it has all the makings of a good bonsai. It's got the good root flare. It's got movement. It also have taper. Now, I have plenty of options. If I want to make it shorter and more dynamic, I could cut across here and cut across here and have a really short, stout, very impressive bonsai. But I don't have to make that kind of decisions right now. What I should be doing about now is I need to protect a lot of these branches from getting crowded. This is getting awfully heavy, and this is primarily my sacrifice branch. So for now, I think what I'll do is to take this side off versus back here, it could grow as large as it wants without hindering the progress of the others. And I'll go ahead and remove the center just because it'll go straight up. Okay? And then this is a branch that's going to go away. But right now, it's really not doing any damage. It may help to fatten this area. This is in a slightly different location. Now, if it's going to start causing a bulge, then we have to take it off. But for now, I'm just going to shorten it up, but leave it in place. This one here is going to be important. A little bit of greenery on this skinny, long branch. So if we could get that to strengthen, we could cut it short and it'll be so much more valuable as a branch. So what we do on these is to remove all the center candles. All the energy wanted to go to those center candles. Now it'll transfer to the secondary and also hopefully make this strong. I can also further enhance by maybe on this back side, I'll remove half. That means that for sure the energy will go there. And when the energy makes this thing strong, we could cut it across. Example would be if it start looking like that, then we could for surely cut that off. Okay, I just changed the tilt of this. Let's take a review. So root flare is good. It comes up. We got a couple sacrifice branches working real hard and leaves a potential new apex developing, or it'll just work as a sacrifice branch. As we go up, we're doing good. Then we run into the problem up there. Not a major problem. All we have to do is decide on a few things. We could cut off this side and then come up this side as an apex. This little green one, break this off and it just becomes a side branch. That's one option. Other is to keep going up this way, clean that up, take this off, and then new apex. Those are the calls that you always have to make, and it's not always easy. Let me go ahead and clean this up a little bit. After careful evaluation, I realized that this trunk and this trunk is somewhat similar. So we don't get as good of a taper. So what I'm going to do is to take this side off. Now it turns and it goes up this way, just cleaning up a little bit. And then once again, this one is going to become a side branch. If you don't do anything, it's going to compete. By doing this, now it knows it needs to be a side branch. So this will be in this place. This will be a new apex. When it gets a little stronger, we'll break it off. But I think that helped that top transition. Each section should start to get shorter as we get to the top. And the other thing is, we talked about it before, the top of pines always grow faster, more vigorously than the bottom. So having taken off the top and slightly over pruned the top, keeping a lot of the bottom basic going at the same rate will balance this energy. And that's a word that we're going to be using more and more after we get to the more finished product. So always think in terms of balance by over pruning the top, letting the bottom stay relatively over or under pruned with the overgrowth. That will balance this whole energy. So I think this is good for now. It goes back in the can, it gets fed, it gets watered, and maybe another year to 2 years, we'll see what the reaction of these guys are, and then we could go into our mica pot, which is closer to the finish, but nowhere near.